claimed that we were going to solve all of your problems. What we told you is that now we have more options. Even if we accept that maybe China is going to be dominant, we don't think that's an exclusive value. The difference now is, instead of being forced to go to the one dominant person who exists, you at least have the capacity to choose where you want to go, even assuming none of those people have exactly benevolent interests towards you. But secondly, they simply assume that the existence of these other institutions and our welcoming them precludes us from accepting anyone else or from participating in any other institution, which is simply false. We don't understand why that would be the case, because we told you very explicitly that this isn't even only about China. We told you about things that are happening in Africa. We told you about all of these other institutions which are even actively competing with China. In fact, I don't think they understand the very simple economic principle of competition, which China is going to have to compete in anyway. Obviously, it's very hard for China to be so abusive if they can just go somewhere else. It conforms to the same standards of competition as everybody else. Furthermore, they couldn't kill the very basic idea of competition. They could not kill the very basic idea that when we have more options, when we are not forced to accept the first thing that comes to us, it necessarily makes it easier for us to lower the expectations of us, to get lower interest rates, to get more flexibility, etc. They did not cater to the idea that certain markets simply are not catered to by these Western financial institutions, and basically said that if the West doesn't pick you, you can suck it, because the West gets to prioritize, and that's just inherent to their institution. They didn't even respond to the idea that at the very least it gives us a choice to pick our poison as opposed to condemning us to one. They did not respond also to the shifting focus and the shifting context in which the dominance of these Western financial institutions is not something that is secured as they simply assume. We gave you a lot of matter telling you how these financial institutions are not developing as fast as ours and how ours are even out-competing them. Furthermore, we don't think that this assumption of benevolence is going to play anywhere in this debate. We don't think we're going to be able to convince you that China is more benevolent or the West is more benevolent or whatever. So the best thing to do is to assume that everybody has personal interest. Everybody's just going to do what gives them more profit. So we don't understand why an institution that is highly globalized, that can get from anybody and who profits from anywhere, is going to be more incentivized to develop a small particular region than an institution that is based particularly in that region, or at least an institution which receives most of its business from within that region. It simply doesn't make sense. Lastly, let's talk about the exclusivity of values. They told us, and this is basically their only valid contribution, that our institutions are not properly regulated. Even if we concede this point, we're still not going to lose. Why? Because the very person who gave us this problem in the same breath gave us the solution, that we can simply reform institutions that are problematic. We don't understand why they can assume that's going to work on their side, but it's not going to work on ours, especially given that highly entrenched institutions are a lot harder to change than ones that are just sprouting up right now. And we think, furthermore, that this problem is only further perpetuated on their side because it prevents us and it disincentivizes us from actually creating better regulations for those institutions. Because anyway, we can always rely on the West, right, guys? Next is this idea of China and its regional dominance. Now, all of the analysis as to why it's so bad for China to be dominant actually plays right into government's hands. It shows us exactly how the dominance of a single entity can be so profoundly harmful. And we don't understand why that is exclusive to China. They weren't able to respond to our example, for example, of how Greece was forced to accept harmful economic policies that it did not want to, simply because it had no one else to run to. They did not respond to the idea of all of these small countries that have no one else who is willing to give them a loan and who is therefore compelled to accept whatever the West wants. There is no comparative analysis here. The only exclusivity then under opposition side is that we have all of the same problems. We have dominance, we have a problem with regulation, we have a problem with prioritization. The only thing they don't have is choice. We think that the era of relying on the West and the West being the end-all be-all of globalization should come to an end. And in order to do that, we need to empower our own financial institutions. Thank you.